Well, the U.S. decision to drop bunker-busting bombs and fire Navy cruise missiles at Iran's infrastructure for nuclear weapons development was a close call. In the end, President Trump decided to do it.
The strikes were a spectacular military success.
I suspect the reason is because he had tried a negotiation process with Iran and was finding that Iran was prevaricating and avoiding any action, including settlement put on the table to curb significantly their nuclear weapons ambitions and control their ability to turn uranium enrichment into weapons. They refused to negotiate on that. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel had ordered extensive attacks on Iran, which had reduced their air defense systems. Earlier Israeli attacks on the leadership of Hamas and Hezbollah had pretty much left them in tatters. And so Iran was very weak and very exposed and brought this on themselves by refusing to eliminate their nuclear weapons program. I spent a good part of my career working on negotiating with North Korea in an attempt to curb their nuclear weapons programs. And candidly, we were not successful. North Korea has a nuclear arsenal. And the reason was there was no military option with North Korea. The North Koreans had, at the time we were negotiating 20 years ago, an extensive arsenal that could bring enormous damage on Japan, Korea, and potentially others, including the US. The North Korean rockets and artillery launchers are as close to downtown Seoul as Wollongong is to the CBD in Sydney. So we contained and tried to deter North Korea and then pursued diplomacy. And what we realized in retrospect was a determined regime, defiant of the US and of the democratic world and of its neighbors, will go to great lengths to prevaricate, hide, and muster its nuclear weapons capability if it can. North Korea could, and it did, and it has a nuclear weapons arsenal. The North Koreans have nuclear weapons now, but they're contained. North Korea never had ambitions to massacre South Korea the way Iran has ambitions to destroy Israel and massacre Jews. And North Korea never had any possible scenario to dominate North Asia with Japan and China and Russia at their doorstep. But Iran does have deep-seated hegemonic ambitions over the entire Gulf. Iran seeks regime change as far and as wide as possible to include Qatar, Oman, Saudi Arabia, and ultimately control over the Gulf and the oil resources that fuel the world economy. So Iran should not be allowed to have nuclear weapons. No state in the system, not China or Russia even, think that Iran should be allowed to have nuclear weapons.
The world has long agreed that Iran cannot be allowed to get a nuclear weapon, and we support action to prevent that. That is what this is. We are deeply concerned about any escalation in the region, and we want to see diplomacy, dialogue, and de-escalation.
Australia, in my view, should not be a sort of uninterested observer. It's correct to call for negotiations. I think the U.S. Is not interested in invasion or regime change like with Iraq, and Iran should be told that this should end and there should be no escalation. But it might be time for Australia to go a bit beyond that and be a bit clearer, as Minister Marles was, about what a North Korea type scenario would mean if it were Iran, if Iran had nuclear weapons. We've not heard that clearly from Canberra. And it would be helpful, I think, for Australia to say clearly what's at stake and how it affects Australia. What Australia should want, like most of the world, is an end to this. This is not a UN General Assembly moment for Australia where you call on peace and negotiations for all parties. It's a moment when serious powers in the world step up and say clearly what is at stake and what the expectation of is of Iran. I think the US and other countries will be looking to see if Australia expands on that in the days ahead.